No.
Well,
because frankly, I would have played the other move.
The other move,
yes.
yeah. Well, what he's trying to do is to push the move d4, which just frees his position completely. He's trying to break out at one fell swoop, and this is the natural preparatory move for it. But what he underestimated or overlooked was Morphy's tremendous reply, which to us seems quite natural, but to them, to the players in the 19th century who didn't really appreciate the theory of weak squares and so on, this must have come a bit of a thunderclap. Move
Yes.
Queen d3, and suddenly
Makes you gulp when that sort of thing happens to you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh dear, where did that come from?
Yeah.
You know, suddenly this enormously powerful piece,
Right.
the queen, is right in the guts of the white position, and it's very difficult to shift it because the black rook controlling the e-file means that white can't get his bishop from f3 back to e2 to chase it away. So this is now a monster sitting in white's vitals. Very hard to remove the queen.
And we're on move number...
This is move number 12 when we play queen d3. So even just after 12 moves, white is already rather thrashing around. And what he tries now is a diversion on the extreme left flank. He plays b4, chasing the bishop, which just drops back to b6. And now, move 14, he plays this move. And what do you think about that, Donald? Have you got any alternative ideas there? Let's go back to the position before white plays this. Would you have played a4, or can you think of something else?
I wouldn't have played a4, but...
I think a move I would have considered here, and given the defensive nature of white's position, is perhaps to put the rook on e1.
Why not e1? Yeah.
Because the black rook on e6 is a very dangerous attacking unit, and I think that when you're under pressure like this, you should try to eliminate the attackers. And I think even with a move like this, you know, Paulsen might have survived, because the black position on the queen side is still quite weak, and if he can just eliminate the attacking black pieces, he could survive. But he didn't play rook e1. He lashed out on the queen's wing. Yeah. Even after this...
Yes, even after, you know, I mean, it's...
White's position is still almost playable. Morphy took it off. You know, again you see the same concentration on not losing time. He doesn't bother... His queenside structure is now a wreck. Yeah. He's got 4 pawns, isolated and doubled, and they're a monstrous wreck, really. But he doesn't want to lose time. He doesn't want to have to defend against the threat of white pushing on the pawn to a5. He just wants to get his pieces out as quickly as possible.
But you'd think he'd still be very... I mean, why not even now? Rook to
e1. Yeah. Yes, white in fact took the pawn back on a4, but again, the sensible move is rook to e1 to eliminate that dangerous piece. And the pawn on a4 can always be captured later on.
Yeah. Yes, I knew an old ex-Lithuanian player used to always say, it won't run away.
It won't run away, that's right. White took the pawn, and Morphy developed his bishop. The dual-purpose move. First of all, he wants to bring the queen's rook into the game as quickly as possible, and secondly, he wants to defend the pawn on the c6. And now this is really where I think Paulsen throws the game away by underestimating Morphy's tremendous powers of attack. What he should do now, quickly, is put the queen on a6, challenging that black queen on d3. And this was his last chance to stay in the game. And to a certain strange extent, it justifies White's play. And White's play looks rather amateurish by modern standards, but there was some point to it. And by playing the queen into a6, he would have kept on the board. But he didn't do that. He played the rook to a2 first, which is a necessary precaution. And now Morphy mobilises the final piece.
Now you see here, Ray, is where I think the average club player would already have been so nervous of how weak he is down there. To compound this, in effect, is what he's done, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. But it's on the king's side, on the right-hand side of the board, that the denouement is going to come.
Yeah.
And now Paulsen plays this move. He finally gets the right idea. He challenges the black queen.
Too late again.
Too late. The reason it's too late is truly astounding. And it's this next move. And so far, the play by Morphy has been efficient, well mobilised, flowing. And the play by Paulsen has had a few hiccups. It wouldn't stand up by modern Grandmaster standards. But it's Morphy's next move that really catapults this game into the Super League. It's a move that would have bowled over all the contemporaries, especially with the black pieces playing such a a decisive attack, and this is it. Watch carefully now, as black sacrifices the queen. The queen takes f3.
Yeah, it's scary.
And I categorise this as a $1 million PR move. I mean, if you want to make your reputation, if you want to become noticed by everybody.
You mean it's worth $1 million in building up his reputation?
Absolutely,
yeah.
that's what it is.
Yeah.
And of course, white's got no choice at all. He has to take it off. And now black's given up the queen. But in exchange, he's
cost
stripped
of
away.
terrible nakedness.
That's
yes.
right. The white king is totally naked. And now the pieces, what's left of black's army, swoops in for the final attack. First of all, check. There's no choice. Of course, he has to put the king in the corner. And now this bishop comes into h3, attacking the rook
And
and
it
threatening.
gets ever more and more horrible.
That's right.
Yeah.
The rook has to move out of the way. And now it's kind of seesaw operation. The bishop comes into g2, check.
Ray, why wouldn't he have gone to f1 there? Or it's g1, yes.
In this position?
Yes.
Yes, I see. If he goes to g1, then black can simply take the rook on g1 check,
Yeah.
and then bring the other rook from e8 into e1.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
It's over very quickly then.
Right.
So he put the rook on d1. The bishop came in here, check. The king went to g1, and now all this is forced. It's a horrible seesaw.
Yeah.
Check, again from the rook.
It's quite sadistic, actually.
That's right, the king has to go to f1. The seesaw starts again, bishop check. The king can't go to the e-file. Has to go to g1. The bishop goes to h3, discovered check again. And the king is forced back into the corner, h1. And now, the final attacking unit, bishop takes the pawn. And the fatal net's been woven. And the threat now is bishop g2 checkmate. White's got no choice. He has to start getting material back. Starting
Yes.
with his extra queen.
Yeah.
Morphy took it off. Bishop takes. Rook takes back. So at least white's starting to beat off the attack a bit. But the final wave,
Yeah.
in comes the black rook.
Ray, the old saying, a gentleman would resign.
Yes.
You know, didn't he know already that he was...
He must have done it, it was
Yeah,
up the creek.
yeah.
But he struggled on for a few moves. He played this, rather a pathetic move. And the black rook came here, clearly ganging up on the white pawn. And the last fling, d4. The bishop attacks the rook. But now, the coup de grace, bishop e3. And here Paulsen resigned.
Yeah.
And the reason he resigned is that after bishop takes bishop, rook takes this pawn.
H2, yes.
Check. King goes across.
And that's the end of the story.
And rook g2, total checkmate.
It's that capture with the queen which is so brilliant, isn't it?
Isn't it? Well, Paulsen was a Prussian playing in New York in the 1850s. An example of just bringing people together. Have you got any stories of this from South Africa?
Oh, South Africa's full of... I remember in my chess club an extraordinary incident when we integrated the club. The black players could belong. Only one member refused to play because they were blacks, and he was an old Afrikaner. And he just wouldn't even come to the club because there were blacks there. And then after about 5 months, he wandered in one night and he said, I've just come to look, I haven't come to play. And then inevitably he started looking at some of the games. He asked the young black player why he'd moved that night there. And of course, inevitably, they started discussing it. They started playing through a few positions, and he ended up playing often with this chap.
Rejoining the human race.
That's right. And this young black player was a young schoolboy, Charlie Sorga, who later checkmated Hans Rie of the Netherlands, which is pretty rare in a simultaneous
Grandmaster Hans Rie.
to be checkmated. You know. So, yeah, it did bring people together, and I think it always will.
It's a charming story. Well, thanks very much, Donald. Next week, we're going to look at the very brilliant game played at London 1883 between another Prussian, Johannes Zukertort, and the first English Grandmaster in our series, Joseph Henry Blackburn. Meanwhile, it's goodbye from Donald, goodbye from me, goodbye from the entire chess team. Join us next week.
Duels of the Mind was presented in association with Grandmaster Video magazine.